Minister, very good evening to you. Thank you for being on Nightline. So, are we at the beginning of another year of crises in the higher education sector?
Good evening, Thembekile, and happy 2020. I haven't been on your program. Thanks for your invitation. I really hope that we are not on another year of turbulence, I really hope that we will be able to deal with whatever challenges that we are facing. I also just want to put it up front that there is absolutely no need for this shutdown and the disruption of registration at our institutions of higher education, because all the issues that have been raised by the South African Union of Students, we have discussed them. And we have also responded to all the issues. Let me just give you one. This thing that the students who are going to be chased away because they owe, there is no such. All NSFAS qualifying students are going to be registering whether they owe or not, and they are not going to be paying any cent upfront. And also, we have actually been saying that as government. This year, for the first time, we are starting it with NSFAS having told all the students who applied last year that they have qualified or not. So those who actually qualify, are eligible for NSFAS, are going to their institution with proof that they actually do qualify, so that registration is very smooth. So this thing that they are poor and working class students who are being excluded, Thembekile, there is just absolutely no truth in that. As a matter of fact, I've never seen a deadlock that has been declared outside of having had discussions.
And I want to come in there,
to a deadlock.
Minister, because there's quite a substantial list, I should say, of demands that the students have made. But I want to talk on the issue of the students who qualify for NSFAS in particular, because one of the demands, as I understand it, from the South African Union of Students was that provision, for instance, for funding be made for those students who register late and walk-ins, for example, who would not have been allocated funding at the end of the previous year. Why is that unworkable at this stage?
There's nothing that is unworkable, Thembekile. Let me say this to you, that NSFAS is open to all those students who may not have applied last year, who have actually been offered a position or an admission, a place at a university or a college. All those will actually be assisted by NSFAS if they qualify for NSFAS. We have explained this to the students. We almost had 4 hours with the student leadership last week. We explained all this, that there is no such. And I want to guarantee to the South African people tonight, through your own station, that not a single student who qualifies for NSFAS who has been admitted at a university or a college will not be funded or supported. It's a pity. I'd also like Thembekile to challenge the media, maybe also, that to find facts for themselves, so that we don't argue or debate on the basis of what basically are false statements that are being made. There is no such. We have approved, and we are going to be having more than 700,000 students from universities and TVET colleges who will be assisted by government. And it's quite substantial assistance for NSFAS qualifying students. Tuition is paid for, accommodation is paid for, meals are paid for. Where there is no university or institution-owned accommodation, students who have private accommodation will actually be given between 1,500 and 2,250 rands per month for 10 months to be able to get accommodation and be able to get food for themselves. And by the way, unlike before, Thembekile, this is a free bursary by government. It's not a loan. These students will not have to pay back this money. All we expect from them is that they work hard and pass, so that they can be able to support themselves, support their families, and be able to meaningfully participate in the economic development of our country.
I want us to come back then, Minister, to the issue of accommodation later, but let's stay with the fees because the Union of Students has spoken specifically about postgraduate funding, where they say there's a problem. For example, someone gave the example that if you are a psychology student, for example, funded by NSFAS from first, second and third year, now you're going into your postgrad year and you are battling to secure funding. By the department's own understanding, what is the situation there, and is there a clear enough number of postgrad students who were on the NSFAS program who for some reason now are not being given funding, especially for qualifications where one does need a postgrad in order to practice?
Two issues there, Thembekile. The student leadership, they know very well. I think they are throwing this demand really to try and create a grievance that doesn't exist. Government policy is simple. It supports all poor and working class students whose families are earning not more than 350,000 rands per annum to complete at least the first qualification at a university or a college. That is what is existing as government policy. SAUS itself accepted this when it was announced, and that it's going to be a free bursary. There is no bursary that is an entitlement at postgraduate level. Nevertheless, government does pay money and fund postgraduate students, but the rules are very different for postgraduate. You can't be throwing the two things at the same time. Postgraduate students, firstly, you have got to get a very high mark to be admitted to psychology. I'm sure universities, many universities will be asking for anything upward of 60%.
So is it your reading then, those, forgive me for interrupting you, is it your understanding then as the department that those who've not received postgrad funding simply are not meeting the academic criteria? Is that what you're saying?
Well, partly it would be not meeting the academic criteria, and secondly is that there isn't enough postgraduate funding. That is the main issue that as government we want to expand, because it is in the interest of our country. But it's not part of the deal. It's not part of supporting poor students to acquire the first academic qualification. Most monies have actually gone to paying for undergraduate, because government is saying we're a poor country with the history that we have had. That is what we need to do. There are postgraduate students who are being funded from NSFAS who are actually being poor, but there isn't enough money for that. And I must make this clear. This is a demand that the students are making, knowing very well what government policy is. It's shifting the goalposts for some of them in order to justify going into the streets and disrupting registration. And I have said to the students, let's work together to seek more money from Treasury for support for postgraduate students. And let's continue to discuss this, working together, rather than actually saying, well, we are not going to start registration and disrupting students who are coming, many of them, to university or college for the first time in their lives, if they are not the very first people who are actually accessing post-school education and training. With 35 billion rands, Thembekile, that we are paying this year as government to support working class and poor students, there is no issue that is not a subject for discussion. I have said to the students very much clearly. That is why I don't understand why college shut down when there's been no deadlock in discussion.
Okay.
We haven't refused as a department to stop to talk to the students at all.
You speak, Minister, about the shifting of goalposts and things being put in or brought to you now that were not part of the initial free higher education agreement, but the fact that there are students affected by these issues that we're dealing with tonight speaks to a need in the space, and ultimately solutions need to be found, and they need to be found quite urgently.
We have found many solutions to the challenges that we have. Yes, there are outstanding issues that we cannot be able to deal with them overnight. For instance, since 1994, we have increased university students from just under 400,000 to just 1.2 million now. But the numbers and the increase have not been supported by investment into infrastructure. That is why we still have shortage of university accommodation. Also, we have got a skewed system where we have more students going to universities than to TVET colleges. We do need to expand, and we are committed as government to expand TVET colleges even more, so that we do not have these millions of young people who are sitting at home. By the way, in all this discussion, Thembekile, which I think the media also will take up, what we forget is that we have got about 6.4 million youngsters between the ages of 15 and 24 who are sitting at home doing absolutely nothing. And government is committed to actually addressing the whole issue of the entire youth, including university and colleges, but even more especially those young people who have no hope, no future, because they have got nowhere to go. All those issues are being dealt by this government because we are a committed government. That's why we are saying, why have a shutdown when we actually have been talking? I haven't said as my department doesn't want to talk and engage with the students. That's why also we are calling...
That you say that your department has been open, essentially, and participating in these negotiations, because what the Union of Students is accusing you in particular of, Minister, is being arrogant and approaching them or engaging in these conversations with a degree of disregard. So looking at where we are currently, where is the solution going to come from, given that they already have these feelings about you, and we're in the midst of what's meant to be a long-lasting shutdown?
Well, first of all, Thembekile, I must also make it clear, by the way, most of our universities and colleges are registering peacefully as I'm speaking to you. We have got a few instances where there have been disruptions, which is very unfortunate, which is something that we are encouraging, that more students must be allowed to register, so that they are able to deal with this. It simply is untrue to say that I'm not treating students with respect. And I want to tell you that over the past 10 to 12 years that I've been in this portfolio, just over 10 years, I have always been engaging students all the time, talking to them. Here I am, I'm sitting and I'm saying, we had a 4-hour discussion last week, and we agreed when he left that if there are any issues you want to raise, raise them. In addition to that, we said to the student leadership, don't make generalizations. If there is a problem at a particular university or institution, come to us and tell us, there is a problem there, NSFAS students are not being admitted because they owe. We will go to that institution because we have an agreement with institutions. Similarly, also, there are many issues that students should be taking to their own institutions, like, for example, the accreditation of private accommodation. We have an arrangement with the institution. There is not a single of the 15 issues that the students have raised that we have not dealt with, that we are not dealing with, that we are not willing to talk about and try and find one another. These demands also, Thembekile, I must just tell the country, they were given to me through the media even before I had seen them, and with no request to meet with me. Instead, it was myself, even before these demands were there, who actually requested a meeting with a variety of stakeholders, including students.
All right.
To simply say that I'm unable to speak, really, it's a very cheap excuse in trying to justify something that is not there. Here I am willing, together with my department, to engage with the students.
We're running out of time, but there's another issue, the issue of university enrollments. The Union of Students is saying that universities are under-enrolling, and how they base that, they're saying that SRCs have learned in the various meetings that they sit on with universities that even though we're told there's a crisis of space in higher education, universities are simply not taking in the numbers in line with the increase in bachelor passes, for example, at basic education level. Has that been brought to your attention? Have you checked on it? And what is being done?
There is no such. Our universities are bursting at the seams, I can tell you now. Our TVET colleges are bursting at the seams because we just do not have enough space. What may be happening is that in particular programs, particularly those programs, some of them, not all of them, which require certain subject passes in matric, where we do not have them in numbers. For instance, we've had a decline in the maths and physical science passes. So you may find that there may be an odd program here and there in our institutions that is not fully subscribed because there aren't enough numbers of students. But that would be very, very tiny. On the whole, our universities are bursting at the seams, and we have taken in terms of our own enrollment plans. We have said to the students, come and sit with us. Let's together go through the enrollment plans at national level. Also, you have SRCs, you sit in university councils, by the way, where all of them are there when these things are discussed in the university councils. I'm very proud that I'm part of a government that has actually created a participatory system where all stakeholders, not least students, have got an opportunity to be able to negotiate, to state their views, and be able to discuss, such that we focus on what I would actually be requesting the students to do. Let's work together to deal with whatever obstacles are there, because we are open to do that. Our institutions are ready to do that, to actually engage. That is why most of them, there is registration that is going on. And we are saying that there is no need to actually go for a disruption, because there is no single issue that is not subject to discussion or engagement about.
Minister for Higher Education, Nzimande, live for us in our Pretoria studios. Many issues still to discuss, but thank you so much for your time tonight.